Welcome, Madeline Martin, to accept this invitation to talk more about the last library in London, la última librería en Londres. Y bueno, fue un honor para nosotros leer tu novela. For us, was a great pleasure and honor to read your novel. Thanks for to accept the invitation to stay with us and talk more about your novel in Atando Libros.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm so glad everyone enjoyed it.
Well, we're going to start first to talk more about the characters. Grace and Viv are two girls that decide to go to London to increase and improve their lives, but they encourage the Second World War. First of all, what's the inspiration for you to write about the Second War, but the really things that happen in London? Because all the time we know more about the struggle, but the soldiers, but didn't know more about the citizens of London.
Right. Well, and I feel like daily life is something that I've always been very interested in. I've always been more interested in like the day-to-day people more than royalty or whatever the case may be when it comes to history. And for this particular book, I love history, so I'm always reading all sorts of articles. And I happened to find this one amazing article that was talking about the Paternoster Row bombing. And that was the bombing that occurred at the end of December in 1940, where where the primary bombing happens in the last bookshop in London, where all of those bookstores were completely destroyed. And at that point in time, over 5 million books were destroyed, which I thought was just really heartbreaking. And so I thought, well, I love communities centered around books. It's just something that's always been a really big part of my life. And I thought, what if there's one little bookstore that is sort of almost the heart of the community with all of these horrible things happening? And that's where I came up with the idea for the last bookshop in London.
Okay. Danny, if you want to ask some to Madeline.
Mm-hmm.
We don't hear you. No te
Oh,
escuchamos.
yeah, we can hear you.
Quiero preguntarle qué personaje tomó su propia vida cuando empezó a escribir y que le haya gustado más, ¿por qué?
Which character takes a real life before when you are writing the novel that guide you across the novel, no? That you think it's alive, no? The character. Which of one?
All the characters really are based off of pieces of real people. So I don't have one person who influenced my characters, but all the characters are really influenced by a lot of the firsthand accounts that I read. And one character specifically did actually come from part of my research, and that's Colin's character. And with Colin, I was reading through something called mass observation. And mass observation was this this initiative where people were writing in diaries before, during, and after the war, and really writing down their thoughts and how they're reacting to what's happening to them. And there was one woman when I was reading through that who said her son was laying on the ground next to their family dog, and she was saying, you know, that he's going to go to war because it's his duty, but he really isn't somebody who's made for war. He really is a very gentle spirit. And what happens to those boys? And so honestly, that's why I wrote Colin's character, was because of having read that. I'm a mother, but I have two girls. I can't imagine being a mother of a boy who is a gentle soul and having to send them into war. And so really, that's why I wrote Colin's character.
Okay. How many books do you read to concrete the novel?
Oh, dozens and dozens and dozens. I read a lot of nonfiction to make sure that I understand not only the country during World War II, but also before World War II, learning about the entire country so that I can understand the mindset of what people would have been like then. And I also want to read all those firsthand accounts of people who had lived through that to really have a strong grasp and understanding not only of what they had to endure, but also how they reacted to it. Because people will react differently based off of where they live. And the example that I like to give is when Buckingham Palace was bombed. In America, if the White House got bombed, we would want to go kick butt. That's what we do in America. And so, but when when Buckingham Palace was bombed, the Queen said, well, now I can look the East End in the face, the East End being the part of London that was hit the worst in the beginning of the Blitz. And the people said, look at the King and Queen, they're being bombed just like us. So the whole point of the Blitz was really to completely tear apart the morale of the people in England, but it actually brought them together. And so that really is a very British mindset, the way that they approached that bombing, or the way that they reacted rather to that bombing.
Okay, you said that you read the Collins Diary?
Yeah,
Or
no, not Colin's diary. I read a diary by a woman who had a son who was going to war. It wasn't Colin. Colin is a character that I made up because of what I read about the woman and her son.
Did you read more diaries?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of them.
Where do you find it?
It's called Mass Observation. It's MASSOBSERVATIONS. And the reason why Mass Observation actually started was because Wallis Simpson was a divorced American woman who was marrying into royalty, and there was this big, hullabaloo about the whole entire thing. And so they wanted people to write their reactions, and this just happened to sort of segue into World War II. So it kind of got people's impressions before the war, but then also leading into the war, and then they just kept it going until after the war. And it really is, I mean, these are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of people who were recording their everyday interactions and their everyday reactions to what was happening. And it really was an incredible source of information for people like me who are researching that time period.
Okay. Dani, ¿quieres hacer otra pregunta?
Y Angie, me gustaron mucho todas las relaciones de amor que nos va presentando en la novela. Mamá e hijo, la relación de amigas, la relación de hombre-mujer. Todas me encantaron a mí. Personalmente me gustó mucho la relación del señor Evans con Grace, pero me gustaría saber a ella cuál le gustó más.
I love all the relationship with the characters, the sisterhood between Beef and Grace, the relationship Mr. Evans with Grace. In your personal opinion, who is the most important, or why is the most relationship that you care?
Okay. Well, first of all, gracias. Thank you very much. I think as far as relationships go, they're all important. And I know maybe an easy way out of answering that question, but when you think about like for me, my relationship with my mother is just as important as my relationship with my husband. It's just as important as my relationship with my children. These relationships are really what ultimately make us completely whole as a person. And I tried really hard with these characters to give everybody a lot of growth throughout the book. So even, not just the main characters like Mr. Evans, but even with Mr. Stokes and with Miss Nesbit, even those characters still had their growth throughout the book. And it was important to me to not only showcase that growth at the end, but also while it's happening as well. And so really all of the relationships are important, because I feel like all of the relationships also helped with Grace, our main character, to really help her grow as a person into the person that she ends up becoming.
Which do this relation you love the most?
I'm not sure. It's hard. I really can't pick out one.
No?
No.
Okay. Eva has a little problem and asks, what was the main inspiration behind the history, and how did her own life in London influence that inspire you?
So, well, the inspiration for the book came from the bombing on Paternoster Row, the article that I had read about that. And as far as with London, I confess I actually didn't get a chance to go to London while I was researching this book because I wrote it during the pandemic. But I have been to London several times when I was younger. But I will say in my 20s, I don't know that libraries and bookstores were on the top of my list. There's a lot of pubs, but I did still, I grew up in Europe. My dad was in the army, so we lived in Germany for 12 years. And I've always been a book lover. So I've always loved those little bookstores and everything that they have all over Europe. And so, so Primrose Hill Books actually ended up really being sort of like a blend of all of the bookstores that I've been to in Europe and all the little things that I love about them. That's really what I put into that. But as far as, you know, how I was maybe influenced by my personal life, as far as writing this, it was interesting writing it during the pandemic because I feel like it gave me more of an insight into what Grace went through. Granted, there's, you know, a huge difference between what we went through and being bombed every single night. However, there still was a lot of similarities. The first and foremost was that craving for normalcy, that realization that the world that you live in is so completely flipped on its head that you're having to, like, you're reeling, trying to figure out what's happening. And so that was a really big part of it, was that craving for normalcy. But then there were also some sort of funny scenes that came from it as well. I was at Target one day and this woman came by and she had a cart full of toilet paper and paper towels, and she told her kids, hurry up and put it in the cart before all the hoarders come and get it. And I could see that's how I laughed at that, and I thought, oh, I could see Mrs. Weatherford doing that. And that's where the scene came, where she's got all of the tea and all the sugar and she's wanting to try and get it before everyone else can get it. So little scenes like that came from the pandemic, I feel like really gave me more of an insight into Grace's character.
Okay, which of these characters is more like you or have something for you? ¿Cuál de estos personajes tiene algo de ti? ¿O se
I
parece?
think probably Grace.
Probablemente Grace.
Grace, yeah, because I am very bookish. Like I am very, well, I know she doesn't start off as a reader, but reading is such a huge part of my life, and so I wanted it to ultimately become a huge part of Grace's life. But also, you know, I do think about the community, and I do try to hopefully do good things for the community. It's something that's very important to me. And so, so yes, I very much feel like her character is a lot. I am probably similar most to her character than the others. I wish I could be like Viv. Viv is so fun.
Dice que Grace es un poco como ella porque a ella le gusta mucho leer, mucho los libros y también esta parte de aportar a la comunidad, pero a ella le gustaría ser un poco más como Viv, porque es muy divertida. Thank you very much. Do you have a challenge or a problem meanwhile you are writing the novel? ¿Tuviste algún problema mientras estabas escribiendo la novela?
Well, it was, so I had actually written romance before writing The Last Bookshop in London. And so I was used to writing romance. This was my first time writing historical fiction, and it was very intimidating. Thank you. It was really intimidating because, you know, I was going from having 2 points of view, like 2 main characters, to just the one. And really, instead of exploring a romantic relationship, I had the opportunity to explore more of that parental relationship, like her relationship with Mr. Evans and Mrs. Weatherford, and even really kind of delve deeper into her relationship with Viv and Mr. Andrews. So having those relationships kind of supplemented what I would normally do with a romantic relationship. And it was exciting, but it was also a little bit scary.
Dice que ella normalmente escribe novelas de romance y que esta para ella fue un desafío, ya que construyó una relación obviamente amorosa, pero también la novela tiene dos puntos de vista, ¿no? Esta primera relación amorosa, pero también Mr. Evans con Grace y bueno, la otra relación de George con Grace, ¿no? Entonces para ella fue un desafío y pues que ella espera haberlo hecho pues bien, ¿no? Es un poco ahí el resumen. Thank you very much. Why do you love the Second World War? It's very interesting. Me too. I love it, no?
Yeah, well, part of it is the fact that I did grow up in Germany. Sorry. I spent 12 years living in Germany. And so growing up, education always really was so focused on World War II to ensure that we would never have to go through something like that again, that the world didn't have to go through something like that again. And unfortunately, in the hopes that persecution like that would never happen again, though it's sad to see so much anti-Semitism lately. But so it made such an imprint on me, I think, because of being so exposed to it at a young age. And I also really am so amazed at the amount of hope that people were still able to find, even though it was such dark times. How brave people were to sacrifice and really put their lives, maybe not even their own lives, sometimes their children's lives, their parents' lives, on the lines to save people who they didn't even know because it was the right thing to do. That kind of bravery, it's really, truly incredible.
Dice que ella vivió un tiempo en Alemania y bueno, ellos están muy centrados obviamente a recordar para no olvidar y que eso a ella la marcó muchísimo y bueno, que ella trata pues de obviamente aportar esta parte, ¿no? De cómo la gente fue tan valiente para sobrevivir esa guerra y no por ellos, ¿no? Sino por sus hijos o por su familia. Entonces, que fue realmente una situación viviendo allá, que de acuerdo a la manera en que los alemanes ven la guerra, en esta particular visión de no olvidar, pues a ella la marcó.
Angie, perdón, nada más, porque por ejemplo aquí yo en mi comunidad hay muchas personas extranjeras de Inglaterra, Alemania, Francia, y ellos no quieren hablar del tema. Entonces, tal vez la gente que se quedó en esos países necesitan ese recuerdo para no repetir la historia, pero que ella fuera de esos lugares es la misma apreciación con las personas o cambia.
Eva says that in Mexico there are some people that are French or German, but they didn't want to talk about the war. It's a difference between the people that lives in Germany besides the people that lives in England that are French or German because they don't want to talk more about the war, or it's the same in the people that lives in Europe that
Right.
they all didn't forget the war.
Right.
Yeah, it's the same. They didn't want to talk.
Well, so it's interesting. I have a lot of readers who have reached out to me. Some of them have family members who did talk. It seems like it's either people tell the stories a lot or they don't talk about it at all. And I think, a lot of it just has to do with personality type as well. So some people are very willing to share because they don't want people to forget. And then you have other people who they don't want to deal with it at all. So they put it into a box and they don't want to process it and they put it away. So you kind of have a little bit of both.
Sí, dice que hay como una mezcla, ¿no? Hay personas que por su temperamento, por la forma de ser o su vida, les gusta hablar de lo que pasó en la Segunda Guerra Mundial y hay otras personas que no quieren tocar ese tema y que se encierran como en una cajita y evitan, ¿no? Tocar el tema. Yo creo que tiene que haber un poco de percepción, también la parte de la familia, ¿no? En ese sentido. Thank you very much. Dani, ¿quieres preguntar algo más?
Sí, Angie, las guerras siguen, hay otras guerras. Quisiera saber si alguien en la actualidad se ha acercado a ella para mencionarle acerca de su libro, cómo le ha ayudado, ¿no? En la actualidad, pues, que está bajo una situación así de guerra.
Nowadays, we have the war of Ukraine, and Danny asked if some people talk with you about the way that your novel helped them to think or to be so aware about the situation in Europe.
I've definitely had people draw a lot of parallels to what's happening in the book versus what's happening now. And you know, I think it's so sad that I'm writing a book that's historical fiction that still has such you know, that's still so applicable today. So I haven't had there was a woman in Ukraine who was reading my book at the very start of the war, and she did say that she found hope in the books and everything in the story. But that's the only person that I know that's gotten like really hope from it, and as an author, I mean, that's so heartwarming to hear, to know that my book has helped somebody through a difficult situation that you don't like to have to think about people ever having to really live through. It's nice to think that it's not nice to think it's in the past, but you hope it's in the past and it stays there. And when you see it reemerge in the present day, it's genuinely heartbreaking.
Claro, dice que pues hay mucho paralelismo, ¿no? Con lo que sucedió en la Segunda Guerra Mundial y lo que está ocurriendo en Ucrania, que hubo una mujer que ella conoció y que se acercó y que le dijo que, bueno, su novela le había dado esperanza, es una mujer de Ucrania, y que pues ella realmente siente que pues se rompe el corazón al darte cuenta pues de que sigue habiendo esta parte de situación y que ha regresado pues obviamente la guerra, ¿no? Entonces, bueno, esa es la respuesta, y no sé si tengan alguna otra pregunta. No te escuchas, Dani.
Yo quisiera preguntarle cuál es su siguiente libro.
Ok, eso lo voy a aventar al último porque quiero preguntarle. Do you love, you tell us that you love the books. What is the reason you select the Count of Monte Cristo, Sense and Sensibility, and the name of Grace is Bennett? Is a homage of my dearest Jane Austen?
Absolutely, yes. And I spelled it just a little bit different, so it'd still kind of be slightly different, but absolutely. Bennett is totally a nod to Eliza Bennett in Pride and Prejudice. I love Jane Austen. And I'm actually reading Sense and Sensibility right now. The books that I included in the last bookshop in London, they're all books that I've read at some point in my life. So whether they might be something that I read, you know, in middle school or high school, college, or beyond, they're all books that really had a poignancy in my life when I read them for one reason or another. And I will say that with the Count of Monte Cristo, the reason where I ended up coming up with that idea is I was talking on the phone with my dad and I was telling him about writing this book. And he said, "Oh, you have to include the Count of Monte Cristo. It's my favorite book." And, you know, I had read that book ages ago and I absolutely loved it as well. And then, you know, I really wanted to have George Anderson suggest a book to her, and Emma wouldn't really be appropriate, right? So I thought the Count of Monte Cristo really is such a good book to use because it is very applicable to people regardless of age or sex. I think it's a book that really just everybody can fall into and truly enjoy.
Sí, dice que los libros que escogió, muchos fueron porque los leyó obviamente pues en la escuela. La parte de ponerle el nombre de Grace Bennett, pues sí, es un homenaje a Orgullo y Prejuicio de Jane Austen, y que ahorita ella está leyendo Sentido e Insensibilidad, y que el hecho de que haya escogido el Conde de Montecristo se debe a que estaba hablando con su papá y su papá le sugirió que agregara el libro a la novela, y que a ella le parece que es un libro que pues lo puede leer cualquier persona de cualquier edad y de cualquier tipo de género, y pues que es realmente por eso que decidió incluir estos libros. ¿Alguna otra pregunta?
Yo no sé si ya lo habrán preguntado. ¿Qué es lo que motiva a un escritor a volver a tocar el tema de la Segunda Guerra Mundial? O sea, se han escrito tantos libros de este tema que siento que nunca se acaba. Hay demasiadas historias. Entonces, es una historia más, es para motivarnos, es para no recordar, no olvidar, es para, no sé, seguir echándole limón a la herida. ¿Cuál es la intención, no, real de ella como persona, como una persona que pudiera estar interesada en el tema y como escritora al dedicarle tantas horas a un tema que sea, pues ya llevamos más de 40 años con esto, o más, mucho más, y, y yo pienso luego, ¿cuándo se acaba? Hay tantísimas historias que me impresionan.
Okay. A lot of people write about the Second World War. What is your motivation to write another book about this period? Just like a simple person and just a writer.
I think that there's so many stories that still are left to be told about the things that people did in World War II. So I have a couple more that I've written. I have one more with my editor now, and I have a million more ideas that I would love to share. And I feel like it's so important to really showcase what so many people did to help other people and to really help keep their community together. And I think they're really beautiful stories to be able to share, to let those voices never die.
Dice que hay muchísimas historias, ¿no? Y que es esta búsqueda por darle voz a estas personas que pues no la tienen. Ella contó al principio de la sesión que buscó y encontró muchos diarios de muchas personas que narraban obviamente su sentir durante la Segunda Guerra Mundial. Una señora que tenía un hijo, le inspiró a crear el personaje de Colin. Entonces, pues obviamente para ella es importante. Tu pregunta era, Dani.
¿Cuál es el siguiente libro que va a ser, Angie?
Okay. Which are the next novels that you are working on? If you can tell us.
So there's one that do you want to know the ones that are already out or the one that I'm working on now?
The one of you're working now.
Okay, so the one that I'm working on right now, I just actually got the edits back from my editor on. This one is called The Book Lover's Library, and it's about a mother, a single mom. Her husband died, so she's a widow, and her daughter, it's in England, not London, it's in England though, has to be sent away to be evacuated to keep her from danger. And she also starts working at this place that was called the Book Lover's Library, and she kind of starts to find herself without ever having really realized that she was lost. And for people who loved The Last Bookshop in London, there might be some cameos of Grace in that book.
Dice que su siguiente novela en la que está trabajando es The Book Lovers Library, Los amantes de la librería, y que trata de una mujer que se queda viuda. Y bueno, pues es una historia que obviamente pues tiene ahí alguna relación y que por ahí hay un cameo donde aparece Grace. Entonces, bueno, ese es el siguiente proyecto.
Es la saga.
Ajá.
Yo quería decirle, o sea, ahorita que pasamos con lo del el huracán, o sea, es una ráfaga, ¿no? De viento, un instante, la destrucción que hubo, y felicitarla por el momento en que ella describe, o sea, algo que en los apegos que tenemos, ¿no? O sea, cómo ella fue llevando el personaje de Grace, de no me interesan los libros, yo quería divertirme, tener una expectativa de lo que iba a ser Londres, y que el mundo, el momento la pone en una situación tan diferente, que ese poder de adaptación del personaje a esa nueva situación y empoderarse a través de ella, me vibró, o sea, me encantó cómo me sentí en ese momento, de cómo estar escuchando las bombas, el correr, el salvar a la gente, la impotencia, el hecho de saber que pudiera perderlo todo, y dentro de todo esta sensación, rescatar los valores principales de la solidaridad, el apoyo y la empatía con los que estaban perdiendo, con sus propios, con la gente que estaba con las otras librerías, o sea, se me hizo mucho el símil con lo que estamos viviendo en México, ¿no? De cómo, a pesar de todo lo demás y de que los gobiernos pues hacen lo que quieren, cada ser humano también se rescata y el sentirlo en mi piel, en imaginarme el terror y todo eso, es lo que me hace valiosa, muy valiosa esta novela.
Well, Eva says that she feels so deep the parallelism, all the feelings that Grace do for all the people, and the empowerment and the courage, because right now we have the Hurricane Otis, and we have a bad situation. All the things that you write about London, all the bombs and all the people that died, and the activity and the work so hard for Grace to save them. She be delighted to read it, and she gave to you a great thanks for write this novel.
Oh, gracias. Thank you so much. And I'm
Yes.
so sorry for what you guys are having to go through with the hurricane. I live in Florida, so I know that we have to deal with them on a regular basis. But where I live, we haven't had to deal with the devastation as much as some people have. And my heart absolutely goes out to you. I'm so sorry. And I hope that you guys can get everything like repaired as much as possible and get back to normal as soon as possible.
Gracias. Dice que pues lo siente mucho, ella vive en Florida y que obviamente pues están acostumbrados a esta parte y que lo siente muchísimo, que espera que pues se puedan recuperar, que nos podamos recuperar pronto de esta situación. I have only 6 minutes, but we are going to final this incredible meeting with you. And for the last question, do you have ¿tienes alguna pregunta, Dani?
No, Angie, gracias. Solo felicitarla, que me gustó mucho el libro.
Danny says that celebrate your writing and congratulations for the book. Likes
Gracias.
the most.
Thank you.
Well, I have to say, for me, it's very interesting, this book. You gave us the other side of the Second World War, the citizens, the feeling, the noises, all the environment, and all the sisterhood and the brotherhood, and all the huge relation between Mr. Evans and Grace, for me, was so strong, and I cried when Mr. Evans gone. But I have
did
to
too.
say, yeah, I have to say thank you very much to accept this invitation, and thank you very much to write this novel. For me, was so great, and for Danny and Eva and Judith and the other people, we like the most. Thank you very much.
Oh,
Thank you.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you. Muchas gracias. And also thank you for your amazing translation. I have a hard time even summing up when in my own language. So doing it into another language, you're amazing. Thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you very much. Well, I speak a little German. Wie geht es dir?
Sprechen Sie keine Deutsch?
Okay, well, we are going to find this meeting, and we want to thank you, Madeline Martin. If you can see all the whole interview, you can see it in the YouTube channel and the mini talks in our social media. Thank you, and thank you to our readers to have this great meeting. I enjoy it a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was so much fun. Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Gracias. La
Gracias.
foto,
Sí, la foto we have a tradition to take a photograph with the book.
Oh, I love it.
Don't worry, I'm going to put in the photo. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Y recuerden, viaja atando libros.